Another difference that you see between global and local is that there's a massive informal segment that's in Nigeria. And if you don't address how you get products to market and how you solve problems, keeping that informal segment in play, it becomes very difficult essentially for you to scale.
Welcome to our Insights Edge from the Lagos Business School. And I am Dr. Chidozie Nsaido, and here with me today is Mr. Olumide Balogun, who is the director, Google West Africa. Olumide, thank you so much for being here today. And we're happy to have you here with us today. We know you're very busy. Managing Google West Africa, it's not a small task. And thank you so much for being here today. Welcome.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you. Right, so we have a few questions for Olumide. And first of all, we're going to start by asking him, because many people out there still think Google is just a search engine. Some of them think, it's a company that gives us Gmail. But we're sure that there's more to Google than just the search engine and the Gmail, the free email. So can you tell us a little bit more about your product services, what Google does, and other aspects of Google?
No, thanks again for having me. I think when I talk about Google, I always want to start from what our mission is. So and we say that it's a mission that's timeless. It's 26 odd years old now. And we say that we want to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And that's really what informs the type of products, right? It's the mission. And then we also think about the problem statement per time. So over and above search, which I think is what I think a lot of people know Google for, and even now use Google in sentences, right? When you say, I will Google it. We have other products, for example, like YouTube. Again, remember I said that we want to organize the world's information. So think about video content, user-generated content that's informative, educative, entertaining. And I think that's what we do with a platform like YouTube, for example. It has, worked with millions and millions of creators, I think, to bring that to users. Other product, I think that's very important for the African continent and Nigeria more specifically, I think, is maps. Just helping people get to where they need to get to. Again, that is organizing information, because we think about people moving as information that we gather, and we say, hey, how do we essentially help people understand what's the best path to take? And by the way, people don't know that we do this not just for cars, but we also do this for human beings. We actually have something called plus codes, where you as an individual can be at a concert and you will assign a code to you, and your friends who are at that concert can find you. If you think about large scale type human gatherings where people need to find each other, we do that. And I think more recently, not to go through the plethora of products essentially that we have, but I think we've now have artificial intelligence. We've always been an AI first company. And so we have AI tools essentially that help people, whether it's generative AI, which I think is what is the buzz of the moment, if you want to call it that. And then we have, of course, AI integrated in a lot of the products and the services that we offer as well. So everything from search, as you said, to YouTube, to things like maps, to things like photos. People don't think about photos as a product. But again, we organize your photos, and we help make it accessible and useful for you. For example, yesterday, I was on my phone, and then a notification came up, and it was me and my wife, and it was 7 years ago. We went for this nice dinner, so I was dressed up in a suit. She was dressed up as well. So I sent her the photo, and I was like, wow, 7 years. And people don't think about that but even the feeling that we felt in the moment, looking at ourselves 7 years ago, and photos being a product that was able to surface that and help us experience that moment again. We don't think about that as a product, but those are some of the things some of the products that we offer, just to help, I think, take technology and make it meaningful and useful for people.
Exactly. Very interesting. I mean, you talked a lot about organizing information. That's very interesting. A lot of people don't see Google in that way, and that's so important because there's so much information out there. But having it in a structured, organized, meaningful way.
Correct.
That can, you can extract useful information from there, and for it to add value. That's very, very interesting. Right. Okay. Thank you very much for that, Olumide. Okay. So our next question has to do with tech companies that have come from different parts of the world, coming to West Africa, Nigeria. Some of them haven't done very well, but Google has done fairly well for you to be around for this long. I think it's 2007.
Correct.
So what sort of strategies did you have to adopt to be able to be around for so long and be successful in West Africa and in Nigeria?
I think, yeah, I mean, I think we've been around since 2007, as you said. And so the way we think about this is we say, what is our mission? And I talked about like what the company mission is: organize the world's information. When I'm speaking locally context, like in a local context, I'm like, what does accessible and useful, what does it mean to an African user, to a Nigerian user? And so we said, you know what, we want technology to help unlock economic opportunity. So we came up with, okay, this is how we translate a global mission into the local context. And I think that's the first thing that we did right, is taking what the global mission is, looking at a local problem and saying, how does our mission feed into the problem that we have here as Africans or as Nigerians? So every day we say, what are we doing today to help unlock economic opportunity for everyone? And then, I think so it really starts with that, having clarity of how our global mission connects into the local context. And then the next thing is, okay, what are the practical things, that we want to do, and how do we want to look at the local nuance of the market and make sure that that is reflective in the strategy. So we say, want to unlock the economic opportunity. We say, okay, what are the groups? So we say users, businesses. So a user is just a person, right? A business. And then we say government. How essentially can technology help make a meaningful difference for those three audience groups? And then we go into understanding. So what we've done is we've done a lot of research on understanding these three groups, right? What are the more local context issues that we have as Africans or as Nigerians, that you don't just hear of those type of problems in Silicon Valley or in San Francisco. And we make sure that when we develop programs and products, we take the local nuance into account. I'll give you an example. So we have Android as a product, right? So right now, Android is a platform that powers a lot of smartphones. I think right now depending on what data you're looking at, I think it's somewhere between 90 and 95%, I think, of smartphones essentially are powered by Android. And then we say, okay, and we have OEMs. These are other equipment manufacturers essentially who leverage Android essentially to build their products. But we work in partnership with them to say, how do we make sure that we get the product to the right person? Accessibility. Number two is, how do we make sure that we get the product to the right person at the right price? Okay. Affordability. Mm-hmm. And the third thing is, how do we make sure that in doing everything that we do, that there is trust? So those are the three things that really, I think, hinge how we execute in the market. Can we be more accessible? Can we be more affordable? And are we building trust with our customers, or are we building trust with our audience segment? Whether that's users or businesses or government, we're very, very intent on that. So we've worked with the OEMs to see how we can address the informal trade systems. And that's another difference that you see between global and local, is that, there's a massive informal segment that's in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. And if you don't address how you get products to market and how you solve problems, keeping that informal segment in play, it becomes very difficult essentially for you to scale. Yeah. And that's why you have things like, brand ambassadors, you have people on ground who are talking to people, and everything is essentially not being done digitally. because we understand that the people that we are speaking to some of the time want to be able to see someone and talk to someone and not talk to a machine. And so I think that those are some of the things that we've considered is affordability, accessibility, and trust. And by doing that, essentially, we take a lot of local market understanding and nuance into the, and I think the biggest of which is the fact that we've got a massive informal sector. I think there's others, like it's a huge youth population. So how do you build mobile first technologies that essentially address key user needs? How do you pass the toothbrush test? We call it the toothbrush test. And what that means essentially is you use your toothbrush every day. So how do we make sure that we're solving problems in a way that people are going to wake up and feel like, I need to use this? I mean, if you think about it, if you want to go out now, you think about maps, like, automatically. It's because it passes the toothbrush test of solving a problem that you find in your life every day. And Google is able to essentially see how they prefer a solution to that.
Very, very interesting response. While you were talking, I was reflecting. In 1998, I was just about to get to university. And I think that was about the same time Google came out. And I saw the thing, I saw this rectangle, search engine. And I was looking at other search engine, tools out there. Let's call it tools. Excite, Netscape, and the rest of them. And I saw this one with just this rectangle, and I saw this is smart. This is easy. Just put in the thing, and it pulls up the thing. So what you're talking about has to do a lot with simplicity as well, and accessibility, affordability, which is very important. The fact that when Gmail came out, it was free. Got the numbers. And then a lot of people subscribed, and then you took off from there. I think that's something we also need to reflect on in Africa as well. The fact when you're providing a service that people need, it's making it affordable. You can capitalize on,
correct,
on the
correct,
volume,
correct,
and the population and all that. Very important.
And you think about like business models that essentially help you to do that is how do I solve a problem in a way that the person I'm solving the problem for doesn't have to put their hand in the pocket first to experience, right? It's very important, because the truth is that people will always reward value.
Absolutely.
But they have to first of all experience value.
Absolutely.
So what you do is you think about, how do I get this product in the hands of a user, of an individual, without them having to put their hand in their pocket? When they experience it, then you say, how do I build a model around this? And I mean, I think a lot of the time people talk about the fact that, the model for Google maybe is that, we run ads and all that. We do have premium services as well where you have to subscribe. But for the most part, we want people to experience the service and then see where it goes from there.
Absolutely. Well done. Thank you so much. Okay, now the next question I have for you is, as a Nigerian yourself, and but you're Pan-African now since you're in charge of Africa, so we have to accommodate everybody. There's so much talent in Nigeria and across Africa, and as a matter of fact, many of them are leaving the country. As you've heard of this Japa syndrome, there are those who are still around anyway. Not everybody will leave. But what steps your organization like Google, for example, taking to harness the potential of the young talent? For example, we have fantastic coders here, very good tech talent here in this country. So what is Google doing in order to tap into this potential and maximize the potential?
I think the way that, I mean, there's also the Jack Bada syndrome, by the way.
That's the people coming back,
people
right?
who are coming, people who are
Jack
coming
Bada,
back.
yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I think that, I personally feel like we will see more of that in the coming years. Again, 2 to 3 years. I think these things always happen in waves. But I think to speak to how we see it is, migration has always been something that humans have always done, and I think a lot of the time people are looking for what they perceive to be better opportunities or, in other climes. And with that comes the unintended consequences of, what people may call brain drain or talent flight. The way that we see this is something that will always happen, but we feel like if we can do a lot to essentially support skills development, we think that there's a good number of this talent that will be retained here on the continent, building products and services that actually help makes people's lives better. I mean, think about it. Like, if you think about what's happened in the financial services space, right? Fintech companies, for example, a lot of good friends, I think in that vertical, some of the solutions that they preferred to problems that, have been there for years is something that couldn't have been thought of years ago. But this was people who were here, had talent, said, okay, you know what, I want to address some of these problems. And now they have made things better. Mm-hmm. So some of the infrastructural deficits that we may say we have, we don't even feel it as such because we're able to leapfrog with technology. So we think that our core, the way that we can support as a business is how do we essentially continue to help talent development on the continent, but in particular tech and creative talent. We've spent quite a bit of a time, and we've had grants out. For example, as recently as last year, we did a 1.2 billion naira grant in partnership with the government for the 3 million technical trained. That's the 3MTT program, where we're doing a lot of the AI talent development. That's happening there. So for us, it's like if we can get a good number of people skilled in STEM, we think that there's always going to be people who leave. And I do think that there are advantages of that, by the way, but that's not what we're talking about. I think that for those who are here, how do we essentially provide tools and continuous support that they can solve problems? Some of the work that we do through our Startup Accelerator program, for example, helping early stage startups essentially to get the tools that they need, get them in the right environment to get funding. So far, we've done about 150 startups. And by the way, those startups have raised about $300 million, wow, right, cumulatively, and they've hired thousands of people. And that's just Google. I know that there's other people who are doing this as well. So we see our role is, how do we essentially help in that regard with the skills, and then when there's skill, how do we essentially help the ecosystem as well, so that small startups essentially can find their footing and solve problems that hopefully make the ecosystem better. Mm-hmm. And maybe we create collective wealth, and then maybe we don't have more people that want to leave. We have more people that want to stay because they see the opportunity.
Fantastic. That was an amazing response, actually. I mean, you use the term collective wealth. I think when Africans start thinking this way, that, when you're running a business or any venture, it's all about trying to create collective wealth, and it's just a mentality or mindset that we need to have here, more of it, and I'm amazed and really impressed that you actually use that terminology. And I think we need to drive that more in our society, especially in Africa. Right. Okay. The next question I have here for you is, everyone is talking about AI now. What is interesting is that the people in AI are also telling us that we also have to be cautious about AI. But there's the good side and the bad side.
Correct.
But we'll focus on the good side, and a lot of the things that you've been talking about, the positive side, and we'll maintain that. So in terms of artificial intelligence, what sort of areas you think African businesses, organizations should be looking at in terms of integrating AI solutions into the organization, and so on and so forth? And maybe you also want to touch on some of the, if you like, some of the ethical issues surrounding AI. And let me just tie these questions together, because a lot of the ethical issues or issues surrounding AI has to do with data protection as well. Like I mentioned to you off camera, but it's important to shed more light on this. I was running a seminar with people from different sectors, the banking sector, government, all over the place, and I was basically demonstrating an AI application to them. And their primary concern was, this data I'm putting into the AI system, is there any guarantee that it's going to be protected, that it will not be misused or abused? And Google, like you said, which is fantastic, is basically a company that helps to organize information, pretty much world information. And for people to have confidence in organizations like Google and other organizations in a similar space, people need to be able to trust them. And you talked about trust as well, which is one of your objectives. So maybe you want to shed more light on sort of how Google is looking into the issue of data privacy, data protection. I have a Gmail account myself. I'm very impressed that if I log in somewhere else, it tells me that, there's a login somewhere. So, we're fairly safe there. So maybe you want to shed more light on that, as well as how AI can be used to improve the efficiency in organizations as well. Yeah, I've really loaded that. So,
yeah, it's a loaded question, and I'll attempt to answer. Let me know, if there's parts of it that I don't answer, then I'll come back and take it. So, it's interesting because when I was finishing college, this was 18 years ago, thereabout. My final year project was on something that's not AI, it's more machine learning. So the goal at the time was I identified a problem which is much more severe now with the ratio of doctors to patients, especially when you get into the rural areas. So my final year project was really to build a machine learning system that could essentially diagnose common ailments, like just common ones. And it's interesting that at that time, everything was kind of manual. Like you have these microcontrollers, you have sensors, you program it with it's logic. If you get this temperature and you get this and you get this, it's most likely this. And when you fast forward then versus where we are now, and the amount of data that is available, the amount of information that's available to a student that today, like me, 18 years ago, I think there's a lot that artificial intelligence can do. We actually talk about artificial intelligence as maybe the most important thing since human beings found fire. Just think about that for a second. So it is going to affect everything. And the first thing that I always like to encourage people in is that, because I'm trying to take the question together now. So AI is, you are not competing against AI. You're competing against people who are using AI. Whether you're an individual or you are a business or you are a government, like your competition is not the technology. Your competition is people who understand the importance of the technology maybe more than you do and are making very intentional efforts in adopting it. So I think to the specifics of, by the way, it's not just business. I just feel like we can all lean in and say, okay, maybe for example, how do I want to improve my efficiency, right? AI can, artificial intelligence can help you do that now. With generative AI, we've always had predictive AI, by the way. Like we've always had that. Like if you're typing in Google search, we use predictive AI essentially to help complete a sentence. You see it there. We use predictive AI essentially in mapping technology to say, okay, this is most probably how much time it's going to take you based on a lot of data that we've had in the past. But I think generative AI is a new thing where the data is essentially trained, the model is essentially trained, and it's able to generate entirely new things. So when you think about like everything from how can you be more efficient every day as an individual, as a business, artificial intelligence can play a role there. It can help you do simple things like, craft an email response, and then you can edit it and send it along. It can help you do things like take notes. I mean, you have your own personal assistant now in meetings, and there's many tools that do that for individuals today, where you just join a meeting and you're not having to, who's the scribe, or we used to have that, but now AI is essentially able to help you take that and even summarize what the action points and the takeouts from the meetings are. AI is able to do that. And then when you get to things like even helping you drive efficiency and cost, the AI products out there, and Google has as well, built into the engine that essentially helps to So for example, if you think about a small business does a lot of things. Like a small business is many roles rolled up in one usually, because they're not able to spend resources and just get. So today with artificial intelligence, you can actually say to your marketing system, if you in AI, to say, I want to target a certain type of consumer or a certain type of user to buy my product. And we've got a product called PMax that does that, where the AI is essentially able to say, across our Google suite of services, the AI is going to help you optimize and target the right user on the right platform. Before, you'd have to kind of say, I'm going to do a separate ad for search, and then one for YouTube, and then one for maps, and you don't have to do that anymore. As a small business, you can just essentially, put your ad in, and the PMax will help you essentially get that done, and helps you to save costs. So I think that those are some of the things that small businesses, essentially can make use of AI from. Everything from just everyday task, essentially that artificial intelligence helps you to things like doing more complex things like marketing. I think the final thing is data analysis, right? We've got tools in, some of our products that essentially can help you collate all of your sales data and make meaning, essentially from the sales data, and help you make the right decisions. So imagine that you're a business that sells nationwide, and you're able to collect this data in something as simple as Google Sheets, for example. And in Google Sheets, you're essentially able to go there and use the power of AI to do the analysis of the data and pull out very interesting insights that you would have required a data analyst for. But now you don't need to, because those are things that you can do by yourself. So I think there's a plethora of things essentially that AI can. The customer service, that's another one. Right now you can actually program your chatbot for your business to essentially answer some of the more frequently asked questions, so you don't have to be the one who's sitting down answering it. Things like, okay, where's your store address? How much is the price of a product? Things like that. You can pre-program essentially the chatbot to essentially respond to your customers, and so that you've got a customer service person right there to answer questions, and they'll do it faster, more time, in a more timely manner. So I think depending on the size of business, I always say this to businesses, irrespective of what size your business is, if you are not using AI today, you're not doing your business. You're doing your business a great disservice, because no matter the size of the business, there's a lot that artificial intelligence can help you do to help you drive efficiencies, help you drive productivity. So I think that's critically important. Now, in terms of issues, right? Some of the issues that AI. There's everything from, I've heard about people talk about the jobs issue, for example. AI essentially is going to take away jobs. And the way that we see this is that AI will definitely replace certain jobs, but we think that it will also create new jobs. And we think that it will create higher paying jobs. And that's why the skill conversation is really important. By the way, every technology revolution has done this. Whether it's the first, the second, the third, or the fourth, what's always going to happen is that you're going to find a certain strata of jobs, and it's usually the least paying ones that will essentially the machine will be able to do that. And then what will happen is that it will create some higher paying jobs on the top end. And that's really how global economies have grown. So we think that we see that it will be a net positive rather than anything else, as long as we get the skills. I think, again, skills will be the foundation that any economy or any country would need to be able to take advantage of that. You talked about the data. So we take a very bold and responsible approach. People talk a lot about transformer technology, and Google, we innovated, we developed the transformer technology, we open sourced it. And people talk about other players as coming first, but the reason is because we were always going to take a responsible approach of, we only want to release this and make this accessible to people when we have mitigated against all the risk. And that includes everything from how do we make sure that the models are not, amplifying bias. because this data is gotten from the communities, right? And if the communities are biased, and there is a good chance that the machine or the model is also biased.
Yeah.
So we do this by ensuring that there's diversity of data, and making sure that the model itself is foolproof from things like racial bias or the gender bias and the likes. So I think those are some of the things that we're doing on the responsibility side to make sure that as we build models and as the technology evolves, it's also safe, and we take very high ethical standards in terms of its deployment.
Wow, that was really impressive. Here at Lagos Business School, we emphasize a lot on ethical leadership. Because we believe that this world can be a better place when we have ethical leadership. And for someone like you in Google emphasizing on ethics, that's just amazing. That's what the world really needs. And amazing response. You talked about bias. You even went into further detail that I expected, which is good. And you were quite explicit about the kind of bias you're trying to prevent, which is
Correct.
part of because you're in a position where you have a lot of, because data is so important these days. There's a lot that can be done with it. They say data is the new oil now. So you're in a very strategic position. And when we have ethical people in strategic position, that just makes the world a better place. So that's a very interesting response that you've given us there.
And I can maybe dig a little bit deeper. I talked about how we think about our global mission and how we think about how that translates into the continent in terms of how do we unlock economic opportunity. So we then think about like what the pillars of that are. And number one is, I already talked a lot about like AI leadership. We want to make sure that we're having the conversations, and we're essentially supporting, whether that's users, business, governments, from everything from like how we think about policy, AI policy, how we think about the ecosystem. So we do a lot of work there. I think the second thing is skilling, which again I've talked about, is we understand the importance of skill and talent, because at the end of the day, it's talent that really helps you take whatever it is that you have, put it together, and build something beautiful that people can use and create value. So we do a lot there. We've and I even talked about like some of the grants that we've done recently. Actually, even as recently as a month ago, I think I was in Ghana. We're announcing another grant to help drive skilling initiatives across the continent, 100,000 career certificates as well for people. So we're constantly thinking about how do we help limit the skills gap, or how do we help improve on good skills that are already there. And I think the third thing is really we think about how we help small businesses thrive. Again, I say this all the time, especially when I'm in government. It's like small businesses are the lifeblood of any economy. As much as people want to talk about the big businesses, the truth is that it's really the small businesses that helps economies thrive. I think right now in Nigeria, it's 84% of businesses are small businesses, and they drive something like 80 or 75% of the workforce. So that's critically important. And as we think about the technology wave, we want to make sure that we're helping small businesses as well, because some of the time they don't have like big tech teams. And how do we essentially help them take advantage of technology waves, make sure that they're driving efficiencies, make sure that they're finding new ways essentially to reach customers, and even in many cases helping their products be better in itself. Right. So we do a lot of work there. And then I think finally, which is what really people talk, about Google, is, helpful products. How do we essentially make sure that even the products that we put into the market are helpful for African users? I'll give you an example. Recently we talked about adding 26 new languages, for example, to Google Translate, African languages. Africa, by the way, has a third of the world's languages is in Africa. It's very, linguistically diverse. And we are very keen. I always talk about the fact that if people need to understand English to use the technology, then the technology is not as great as it should be. Mm-hmm. So we want to be able to make sure that, irrespective of languages, the language that people speak, that essentially they can essentially engage with the technology and find benefit in the technology. So we continue to do a lot of work to get language inclusion, I think, into our product. And that's just an example of how we're trying to make the product helpful. Others is just like how we're working with local partners on the ground. We continue to do that, whether that's telcos or OEMs, to make sure that the product is accessible and the product is solving local African problems. We have to make sure that we're meeting the need states of local Africans and Nigerians by extension.
All right, thank you so much. I think you've answered pretty much all the questions, and thank you so much for your time. And we're very appreciative of you spending time with us here at Lagos Business School. And I think we're going to wrap it up for the day. And you're welcome to visit us anytime. And someday we'll come and visit you at Google as well.
I'll be looking forward to that. Thank you very much.
Right,
thank you
care.
very
Right.
much.
Thank you
Great
so
to
much.
chat.
Yeah, good to see you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. Right. So that's all from us today at Inside Edge. And hopefully we'll connect with you once again. And thank you all very much for listening. Take care. Bye.